Video is recording. There we go. All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Delineation. My name is Cam White. If you're not familiar with me, I'm a professional astrologer, and this episode is actually being recorded. I think I'm going to be streaming these actually, but this is the first one, so this is recorded for all the nerds out there. This is April 6th, Tuesday. What's the time? 7:47 p.m. here in Las Vegas was the time I started this recording at. I can barely contain my excitement right now for this show. I have a lot that I want to talk about, but just a few things before we get started, just to kind of, the preliminary things. I think I'm going to end up streaming this show. Let me know what you guys think. If not, go ahead and follow my Twitch at Cam White Astro, and you'll get notifications for when I go live and when I stream this podcast. And if you are watching this, and if you want to support further production of more episodes, as well as my other horoscopes that I have on YouTube, go ahead and check out my Patreon link down below. You're going to be able to get early access to content. I'm thinking about also doing a private Discord group chat thing, so we could all kind of talk as well. I will be you guys can be contributors or producers to the show. I'm going to have like a graphic for, everyone's name that becomes a patron. I do also want to put say, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, Instagram. I also want to say don't follow me on Twitter, because that's kind of what this episode is actually going to be kind of, I really want to talk about. Well, before we start talking about everything, let's just also say why I'm doing this. This podcast has been a long time in the making. I've had a lot of people ask, hey, you should do some type of podcast. I've always wanted to, but I never thought I was the type of person that I could do a podcast. But I realized that I can kind of talk a lot for a long time. So here we are. But this kind of originally started for me in 2018 or 2019. It was in 2019. I tried to do a series on my YouTube channel called Think Big Thursday, and the idea of it was I really wanted to talk about bigger ideas that involved astrology but weren't necessarily around astrology. In the astrology world, personal development seems to be this thing that we run alongside with, but we don't ever make eye contact with. We're all kind of under this guise, I feel like, of, oh yeah, we're all, doing this stuff for personal development. But I think when we look at personal development in the face, that's like a taboo thing. Well, anyway, my problem was I was trying to do 15-minute episodes and that didn't work. So that's why I'm trying to do this podcast. I want to do, something a little bit, to go back to what I was talking about, follow me on Twitter. I put here on my little show notes. Don't follow me on Twitter. I have a crippling dopamine addiction to Twitter. I think, as much as I love Twitter, this is also one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, because what's frustrating about social media right now, and being an astrologer specifically, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of things that we as astrologers, and that's not just, professional astrologers that do this for a living, people that are in the astrology world. I feel like there's so many people that don't do astrology, but follow everyone who's an astrologer on Twitter. It's they're just as wrapped up in all this stuff as we all are too. So, everyone's an astrologer if you're into astrology, in my opinion. But, we try to have these giant conversations on Twitter, and Twitter's just the absolute worst platform to ever try to have a conversation on. Limiting yourself to 140 characters or 280 characters doesn't really work well. And I've noticed, for me personally, this is, one of the reasons I want to talk about this is it's like we look at the transits that we just had, right? All of this, because really a lot of this episode is going to be about Saturn and Aquarius, but we see all of these astrology transits. We see all these changes happen, but it can be kind of difficult to it can be kind of difficult to see where exactly you have to change with it. And I look at Twitter as it's been really cool in the sense where there's been this giant community that's really gotten together through astrology, spirituality, and all of this stuff. But social media being designed in the sense, it literally is designed to exploit I mean, anything negative out of you. It's designed to really just highlight controversy. And in a community where the sole topic is, I mean, like, we're all kind of revolved around this idea that, like, hey, there's something bigger than us. Hey, life has meaning. Everything is special. We all share very similar spiritual values. I think it's not counterintuitive. It's counterproductive to be on a social media that exploits the ugly when what you're wanting to do is good. And it's I feel like it's difficult because, especially too during the quarantine, there's been so much there's so many great things out of the internet, and I don't want to talk too much shit on social media because I love social media. I use it. But what I'm trying to get to here is it's not the best way to have a conversation. And I really feel like, especially in the astrology world, there's such this, like, literally there's so much room in the astrology. Like, this is like I feel like this party just got started and no one's here yet, and there's like everything to do, right? There's so much more that astrology has to offer, especially in this 21st century world, what we're going into. I mean, I don't know how much a lot of you guys actually are familiar with some of the statistics of astrology, but when I first started doing astrology, I did a business plan because I'm a Jupiter in Capricorn, and in 1996, I believe it was a third of all professional Americans believed in astrology at some point. And that was in 96. I mean, that was before I think people cared. And I think that was much more, that coincided much more with like the economic boom and then Reagan also with the astrologer and whatnot. But in today's world, astrology is becoming gigantic. Astrology is becoming so much bigger than I think a lot of us realize. I mean, look who's talking about this stuff. Astrology is more, I feel like, publicized now than it's ever been. I mean, even when you go back to the ancient times, sure, it was always there, but like, astrology is just really at the forefront of a lot of things now. It's one of these topics that just keeps getting bigger and bigger in society and no one is talking about. And so when I'm on Twitter, and don't get me wrong, there are so many good, it is insane how many good astrologers there are right now. Like, I fangirl over pretty much everyone, but I look at all of these tweets on Twitter and it's like, we could be doing so much more. And I feel like that was a big, thing for me. Like, it was just like, I'm sitting here on Twitter, like, I want to put content, I want to talk about astrology, but it's just too small. And astrology is such a big topic. Like, there needs to be more conversation about it. There needs to be more, and more things that's not just astrology in general, like things that revolve around astrology, things that, like, for example, like the whole personal development thing. Like, there's a lot of, it's now let me also put a pause real quick. This is my show and I get to say whatever I want here. And not that I'm going to say anything crazy or anything like that, but I'm doing this podcast because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. There's a lot of things that I'm very passionate about talking about. And I think that a lot of other people want to talk about these things too, or at least they want to hear about it. That I think, some of the ideas that I have, I'm not alone in this type of stuff, but I just want to give it a platform, right? Putting things into a small context on Twitter is just it's too difficult. And I think it really takes the voice. I think also in this day and age where, like, I hate saying the word fake news because that's just so many things revolved around that. But the idea of not being able to trust what we see, which, by the way, since we're all astrologers here, I'd also like to just bring up the fact that, like, we've got to start addressing elephants in the room when it comes to, like, future transits. And that might just be me because I'm, of course, obsessed with, like, looking at the future transits and what's going on. But like I look at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, like, we need to be maybe a little bit more discerning of, like, media stuff, because that definitely is going to be a problem in the future. It's going to be a big problem in the future. But again, this is why, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do this podcast, it's something I can do. But what I'm trying to get to is astrology is just so big. It's such a big topic. And I feel like just putting it into these small chunks does a disservice. Same thing with like Instagram, Yeah, I see a lot of astrologers put a ton of work into Instagram and a lot of it pays off, but it's like, man, the algorithm, like, just it if you put in all this work, you lose all of it. And it seems counterproductive. And I think, not to say a podcast or a YouTube is perfect or one way is better than the other, but I've just been kind of looking at things like what holds longevity. I mean, Saturn's in my third house right now. So I'm like, yeah, long monologues, me just talking for a long period of time into a microphone, nothing else going on, very Saturn third house stuff. But this is what I wanted to get to with the Saturn. I really want to talk about Saturn Aquarius. I love LaCroix so much. I just took a sip of LaCroix. Excuse me if that bothers you. But so why I want to talk about Saturn is because I keep looking at the next couple of years and I keep reflecting on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And like, oh my God. I remember looking at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and being like, oh, that's going to be crazy, but I don't know what that's going to be. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, I knew it was going to be something, but I was also kind of waiting for it to be more political and economic, not necessarily, I wasn't expecting COVID to be kind of the thing, but I look at that and I'm like, wow, astrology was right, shocker. But then I look at how we have this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, how that just happened. And now what this is kind of growing into, and it's kind of like, damn, the Saturn and Aquarius transit is, Saturn is the greater malefic for a reason. I truly think, I don't get me wrong, I love Saturn. I love Mars, and Mars is my malefic. But Saturn poses some issues. Saturn poses a lot of problems, a lot of barriers. And I think the hardest part about Saturn is getting out of like the rut, right? Like I noticed so much about Saturn and Capricorn. When Saturn, like, I don't know if do you guys remember the feeling? Like, again, since we're all astrologers here, we can talk about things that I don't have to, like, explain. But it's so weird that we can feel astrology. It's so weird that we can feel that. Like, you can feel when the moon's in Scorpio. You can feel what is that? I don't get that. That's just crazy to me that we can feel that and pretty much agree in consensus. And science is like, oh, it doesn't exist. But anyway, Saturn and Capricorn was so heavy. Just felt like everything was ending. Like, what I really was noticing too with Saturn and Pluto was how many like legacy names died. Like, it was really in 2019 and 2020. I mean, it was like the big legacy people born in, I think it was like the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Leo or something like that. Just all these big name people died. All these big companies just going away. Just ended. It was all so heavy. And with Saturn and Aquarius, you know what it feels like? It feels like where I don't have an experience with this. This is an analogy, so just bear with me here. But this feels like, like you just got out of prison where, sure, you're free. Sure, there's all this opportunity, but like you just spent the past 10, 20 years like doing something else. Now you kind of, there's this freedom, but there's also this restriction at the same time. Like, especially nowadays with how much like prisoners just face way too many difficulties getting out of prison. But that's how I feel with Saturn and Aquarius right now, where it's, we're out of one neck of the woods, but we just started a whole new issue, right? And I think too with Saturn and Aquarius, like what I really learned out of Saturn and Capricorn was like, man, like those, like it was just the rules. Like Saturn conjoining Pluto and Capricorn was like, the rules don't matter. The rules are going to mess you up. I look at Saturn and Aquarius after this conjunction with Jupiter as like, there's an opportunity here, but this isn't an easy discipline, right? Like Saturn, there's nothing easy about Saturn. And I think while it's exciting to have this air sign stuff, I know a lot of people were excited about all of this air sign energy. That's great. But what's hard about the air signs is that it has to deal with logic. Earth signs are easy because Earth signs very, physical. Like here is this. This is a thing. Here it is. Aquarius is an idea. Libra is an idea. Gemini is an idea. This is all stuff that, it's all concepts, right? And Saturn is representing so much more of how we structure those ideas. What pillars do we kind of rely on that build up our, what I always quote Nate Craddock when he says this. He talks Aquarius about being the spirit of the law, in the sense of there's this sense of Aquarian agreement, right? Like what is the natural consensus with things. Now, why I'm talking about this with the astrology stuff is because this is something that's been really on my mind lately, and that's the future of astrology. Right now, I truly believe we are in, and this is something that I can go on for a long time about, and I'm probably going to continue on about this in this podcast. A lot of this first episode, I know I'm kind of jumping everywhere, but a lot of this first episode is going to just be covering a lot of stuff that this whole show is going to be really covering. But, right, we are at a nexus of time with astrology. I was just talking about this, a minute ago, but we can calculate a chart at a click of a button, share that information instantaneously around the world. We have this ability to communicate with other people about that shared info. Then you have things like Project Hindsight and all of the orgs that are, reading or what's the word? Translating all of these historical texts that are completely transforming, the way that we practice and see astrology. And I look at astrology being so big in the media right now, which a lot of, I think some people would disagree with me there, but I would argue that astrology is very present in the media, but it's not center stage. It's been on stage for a while, but it's not center stage. And there's going to be a moment where it's on center stage. And what I get worried about is what articles come out about astrology, because I think astrology is at a very vulnerable place right now. I think astrology, not to say that it's at a weak place, it's just at a, really, it could just take one bad article about something with astrology that can really change things, right? Clearly, I feel like in this day and age on the news, there can be one news article about something and everything changes. I mean, the stock market does. I mean, the stock market hasn't made sense for a long time, but the whole GameStop thing, that was just a couple Reddit people, and people made millions of dollars. Literally anything can happen, but astrology's at this nexus spot, and with it being so close in the media, what I truly think, one thing I wanted to talk about was we kind of need to defend astrology. Not that it's necessarily under attack right now, but I think it's really important that we, I see a lot of people on Twitter, or just in general, it's so easy. When people are oh, astrology is not a science. And then we go, yeah, it's not. And I would argue it is a science, but what I'm trying to get to here is astrology is getting more and more popular. It's only going to get more popular too. There's no way it's not going to get more popular. I made a tweet the other day about how I was oh, astrology has helped me more than therapy. And I also wanted to clarify something with that because, so a lot of people were oh, you're dissing therapy. And it's just well, therapy has worked for me a lot of the times, but more times than not, it didn't. And all I can do is share my personal experience, and that astrology helped me a lot more. I wanted to clarify that because a lot of people are oh my God. And I also think a lot of therapy should be heavily criticized because it's extremely unaffordable for the average person who needs it. And also, what do people get from it? I would be more interested in the statistics into how many people actually benefit and get some type of healing versus go down a different road with therapy. But anyway, what I'm trying to get here is astrology. And also, I know a lot of you out there are therapists. A lot of you are therapists. A lot of you are professional therapists using astrology. And I truly believe astrology is going to eventually be a tool, a really convincing and a very powerful tool in that realm, in that world. So you have astrology blowing up in this sense where it's also in the pop culture too. I mean, I swear to God, Lil Nas has an astrologer, or Lil Nas X, I should say. It's just blowing up in pop culture. It's blowing up in, even in the business world too. Amazon is now targeting people based off their sun sign, based off their zodiac sign. Again, all I'm trying to do right now is just paint a picture of this is real. Like, it's blowing up in this crazy way. It's working too. Like, I think now, if all those astrologers except one said all this crazy things about 2020 and nothing happened in 2020, I would have probably walked away from astrology. Like, if nothing crazy happened, you know what I mean? Like, that was crazy. That was wild what just happened, what we just got over. That was a crazy astrological. Like, if you look through the next few years too, in the next couple decades, in the past couple decades, like, that was one of the crazier moments. But again, I'm just trying to paint a picture of where astrology's at right now, and how, in my opinion, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too. This is I'm a Leo. I'm talking to myself here when I say this type of shit. We treat it so finicky. Like, we treat it so casually. And I think not only is that doing a disservice to us, but that's also doing a disservice to astrology. And that's why I say, things like defend astrology. Like, for example, this is me being maybe a little bit sexist in the terms of how, like, me generalizing here, I guess, in that sense. But, like, for example, on my YouTube, like, 70% of my following is women. And I'm also just going to assume out of most of those women, the men in their life probably disagree with astrology or would say something dumb about it. Because I know as a guy, everywhere I go, I face criticism with it all the time. So I can imagine what girls deal with, because most guys, if they have a problem with it, they don't really say anything to me. Although there are a lot that try. But I also try to say this too, because it's so easy to let people walk over astrology, to like have it be this disrespectful thing, and that it's, like, oh, it's dumb. And I think I think it's like, don't let people do that. Like, also, because also too, astrology is such a damn isolating practice. I mean, like, if you're listening to this and you're not like really connected with the astrology community, like, who in your like hometown do you hang out with that's also into astrology? Like, how many people do you know in person that are also astrologers? Like, it's not like everyone and their brothers doing this. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is blowing up right now for sure, which is cool, but it's an isolating practice, and I think it's easy to deny. Astrology is so easy to deny and just be like, oh yeah, but it's always right, but whatever. I mean, like, at this point too, like, especially if you guys have been following like my YouTube channel for a while, if you follow people like, God, I mean, any astrologer nowadays, because everyone's practicing good astrology. I feel like I have like, I mean, a couple years ago on Twitter, like, there was just a lot of bad astrology. Like, everyone, like, there's just so many good astrologers nowadays that's just like, everyone's on point, man. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're an avid astrology follower, like, you're not into astrology because it doesn't work, right? Like, you're not just casually into astrology because you think it's fascinating, even though it has no relation to you. If you are, then like, we're just going to move on from that if you are. But it's so easy to, I think, let people diss astrology. And I think it's important at this moment to clarify a lot of things. Like, and this is one of the reasons why this brought up, why this conversation I'm talking about this right now. So I saw this post, and this post got really big. And of course, people are going to criticize astrology, right? Astrology deserves criticism. Astrology deserves a lot of criticism, because a lot of astrologers deserve criticism. Because there's a lot of things I think we say as astrologers too that we joke about that I don't think we see as harmful. And I think the term harmful is really tossed around in a lot of different ways nowadays. And what I mean in harmful in the sense that I'm not necessarily saying that it's bringing harm onto someone. I'm saying harmful in the sense that it is going to paint astrology in a very dark picture. Like, the post I keep seeing is like, astrology is just racism for girls, which, like, there's so much of that I absolutely hate. And of course, again, astrology is always going to have criticism. There's nothing you can do about that, and it deserves criticism too. Just like, in my opinion, every belief. But at least, one of the hard parts about arguing with astrology is as far as what beliefs people had. At least I could point to what I believe in, versus a lot of other religions get way more respect. Yeah, they can't point to anything. But astrology deserves a lot of criticism, and it's going to face a lot of criticism in the future. And if you're a practicing astrologer right now and you don't have the guns to back it up, like you're gonna look dumb. Like, honestly, like, that's the scary part. It's not even that you'll make astrology look bad. Like, you will look dumb and you will feel really bad about yourself, which I personally, as a Libra moon, that sounds worse than anything. I hate looking dumb. But I would also say, that's just my personal opinion, my personal energy in it. You should be able to defend astrology because, like, this is what you believe, right? If you're like, I don't know, I don't want to say like I see people being like, oh, dissing astrology or anything like that. It's just, I feel as if if we were to consider people's belief in astrology as like a backbone imagery, it's weak. Like, it's so easy to deny it. It's so easy to dismiss it. And I think in this time more than ever, we need to say, hey, no, like, this shit's real. Like I'm not afraid to say, like, even to family members. And I know a lot of people are intimidated. There's a lot of problems that people have telling people that they're like, that's a whole thing about coming out as an astrologer or whatever. I never had a problem with that because, like, for one, I'm me, but two, astrology just works so well. Like, I and I don't mean to, and this is, again, I was born and raised religious. I respect most religions in one degree, also don't respect them in another degree. But I look at it in the sense of, it's just, it's frustrating where you can pray, right? And prayers get answered all the time. That is a true fact. But you don't know. And I think with astrology, I think you could time your prayers out a little bit better. Meaning, what I like about astrology versus other, and this is kind of one of my, counterpoints when it comes to, like, also looking at astrology as much more of a religion, only in that aspect because it needs to be respected that way. Because also too, because when people start throwing these terms around, like, astrology is racism for girls, do you know how terrifying that is? Do you know how easily that can get construed into, oh, astrology is now racism? Which that again, there's so much of that quote that I hate, but that could instantly turn into that. And for one, I think to compare astrology to racism is so absolutely. How checked out of reality do you have to be to make that comparison? And I think it's absolutely disgusting when actual racism exists and people have been, like, practicing star stuff pretty much and we've been practicing astrology for thousands of years and we haven't did any mass genocide based off of a star sign. So I think, and this is again why I say you need to defend astrology. So when you hear some piece of shit say, oh, astrology is just racism for girls, I call them out on that. Like, that's not okay. Like, that's not an okay comparison. These are not the same thing. And I think too, it's astrology is going to get more and more to that criticism. And it's important that we, again, there's nothing you can do. People are going to pick it apart, right? But the best thing that we can do is we could do our best. We could do something. And I think that something looks like not letting people talk, like not necessarily not letting people talk, but I meant, like, if someone's going to talk shit about astrology, like, talk shit back it up. Like, I think you've got something to defend. I think there's a lot to defend here. What has astrology done for you? What has it done for everyone that you know who's into astrology? Because, I mean, for me personally, and this is why I shared that tweet about, like, dude, fuck therapy. Like, astrology's helped me better because don't get me wrong. I got stuff out of therapy. I think therapy is good. It can really work for some people, but also too online, people just think the blanket statement of men need therapy is extremely sexist. And I think if you say that, you really need to kind of check yourself. But I look at it in the sense of how much time, money, dedication, what I had to do and what I got out of therapy versus the investment I have into astrology and what I got out of it is night and day. It's night and day. It's the same thing with God. I don't even know. There's no comparison really, but it's like astrology has insanely changed my life. And of course, I practice astrology. It's much more involved in my life than maybe the average Joe. But, you guys are into this too. You guys read your charts. You guys see how this is real. Like, and I mean, especially too, once you get into it for years. I mean, I know a lot of my clients, they like, you guys are like, there's people that have been to this 15, 20, 30 years and they've seen it. Like, they've seen how this works. And there's something to defend there. There's something but also too, people are going to use this stuff against us. And I think when we're on Twitter and we're making jokes about sun signs, and I'm guilty of this too. I do this all the time. I think that paints it in a bad light. I think and this is why I'm trying to do this podcast, because I want actual, like, these, like, I've had conversations with other astrologers about certain things like this. I've been able to talk to other astrologers and kind of bounce around these ideas, but like, you don't hear this dialogue. You don't hear, or you just, and all I want to do is, because this is what I don't like about Twitter. It's like, we need to have a discussion. When someone says that, a discussion actually never happens. It's always just like, here's my side and why you're wrong. And I'm not trying to have a discussion. This is my show. I'm just trying to talk about what I want to talk about. And what I want to talk about, though, I think other people have thought, I just think other people think about this, and that there's no, I just want to put ideas into people's heads. You know what I mean? This is, I truly think, so let me take a drink of my LaCroix. So, do you want to know why I named this show The Delineation? I named it for a few reasons. Hold on, we're about 30 minutes in. Okay, I've talked about 30 subjects. Yeah, Mars is definitely in Gemini and Mercury's in Aries. Why did I name the show The Delineation? 1, it sounds cool as shit. 2, we use the term delineate in astrology, which I'm gonna be quite frank with you. I did not look up what the astrological definition is, but there's the astrological definition, and then there's like the Oxford definition. And from what I can tell, as far as the astrology definition goes, it's something along the lines of like, the delineation is how we're reading the chart. Like, you've got Mars and Taurus in the 6th. What does that mean? The delineation is like, well, this ruler is here and there, and it means this. But in the Oxford dictionary, I'm going to really sum this up, and I might be slightly wrong, but it's something along the lines of a delineation is essentially mapping out a territory, mapping out an area through topography, climate, mostly through topographical lenses. And I really liked that concept. For one, I'm a Sag rising in the terms of Saturn. So I'm like, maps? Oh yeah. I'm a slut for maps. I love a good map. But I really wanted to, I feel like as if astrology is an open field, and I said this earlier, and we've got all of this room to play, all of this all of this room to play, and we don't even have an idea of the field that we're on. And what I'm trying to do, and this is what I do, and this is what I do in general, I want to go to the top of the hill and I want to get the view. I want to see what I'm looking at. I want to show Simba what is his, essentially. Don't go to that dark spot over there. That's sidereal astrology. Just kidding. But I want to, there's no way I can be alone in this thought that astrology is really blowing up, and I think it's taking off in a lot of different ways. The one thing I want to say with that too, there's a lot of people out there. I know a lot of people who talk like they want to be astrologers, and I always tell everyone, if you want to be an astrologer, be an astrologer, but add what else you're good at too. I don't want to say anyone can really be a good astrologer. Honestly, it's a practice, right? It's not like you're just gifted with it. You just got to know the information and be able to translate it well, which just takes time and practice, like anything else. But like for example, who was I talking? There was someone I was talking to who was also in graphic design work. It's like, well, add that too. Add what else if you want to be in astrology, add something else to the picture, man. Add what else can you add with it? Add astrology and something else. Oh, Katie, oh my gosh, I gotta plug Katie, because this is, hold on, I gotta actually get the @ name here so I can officially plug. Katie Dayton, @Katie Dayton. Katie Dayton has a newsletter that talks about the food that's in season and recipes in season regarding the astrology. And it's just like that's fucking cool as shit. Like, that's something else added on top of it. And I think, I don't want to say I think. This is what I'm trying to say is bring more to the table. What else can you add? Like, there is this, I made a tweet the other day of, stop asking what the world can give you and start asking, like, what can you give to the world, right? Like, honestly, this world doesn't owe you shit. And I also think that in order to create, in order to gain value and gain better things, like, you have to create value. So get into astrology, add something else to it. And why I'm talking about this is astrology has all of this room. And I named this astrology, this show, the Delineation, because I think there needs to be conversation about that, right? There is local mapping, then there is like state mapping. There's a lot of different maps, right? You can map the air pressure, you can map topography, you can map in a certain depth, right? And I really want in this show, for one, I want to talk about whatever I want in this show, because also I've learned something too, just as a side note, doing something that you think is good but you don't want to do, you shouldn't do that. Doing something that you do want to do, though, even though you may not necessarily have a point with it, do that. And that's how not that I don't have a point with this podcast, it's just I don't have any resistance to this, and I've learned that if I tried to set this podcast up in a way that was like with some special rules or some special thing, I would have hated doing this. But I want to like doing this, and so the way for me to enjoy liking is I want to talk about what I want. But I also want bigger, more Jupiterian conversations around astrology. I think I just, again, I can't emphasize how big astrology is going to get. And I can't emphasize too the criticism astrology faces. And the thing is, as astrologers, when I hear the term of astrology is racism for girls, like, people aren't just like pulling that out of their ass, right? Like, that's coming from somewhere. Like, I don't know if I'm sure a lot of you, did you guys see the post? Eventually, once I get good at podcasting, I'll have maybe someone here to Google things for me, because I'm bad at Googling and talking at the same time. But there's this post, this guy, which I'm not going to lie, it's kind of funny. But this guy pretty much was talking to a bunch of women, lied about his birthdays and changed the birthdays and birth times for every single girl. He put like 111 and like 444, which that to me is funny, is putting a fake, lying about your birthday and then putting 444 for a girl. That is the funniest thing. That's the funniest thing I think I've ever heard of. But the lying about the birth chart stuff, I'm like, okay, that's a little whatever. But anyway, what I'm trying to get to is, he brought up this point of just like, of course, there's just some typical guy shit, like he's just lying to have sex or whatever the intention was. But people don't like that. People are judging him based off of their sun sign, based off of any zodiac sign. And so I think, and this isn't to say stop judging people off their zodiac, like, it's so funny when people are like, oh, don't judge. It's like, our job as astrologers is to judge. Like, I don't know if you've looked through these books, like, but half of the words are the word judge. Like, let's judge this chart. Let's judge this placement. We're judging things here. And that's not a position to, take lightly, right? And so what I'm saying is the way that we talk about zodiac signs, the way that we, especially as astrologers, because I mean, as astrologers too, and this is for the astrologers in the room who are doing the work. You guys get how much of a cultural influence astrology is. Like, what you do rubs off onto other people. Like, people, like, it's astrology is really doing this weird culture thing right now that I'm really interested. It's doing a lot of other things, but the culture world is where it's getting interesting, in my opinion, as far as influence goes. But our attitude around, I think, also being so lightly judgmental about certain zodiac signs, even our own, like, this is also why, like, the self-deprecating astrology is, I truly, again, it's super easy to be self-deprecating. Astrology validates a lot of the negative qualities about us, which is a very honestly one of the best parts about astrology. But the self-deprecating, self-judgment stuff, what we're allowing people to do is judge each other based off those. We're like, wait, let's not stereotype the signs, but then we stereotype ourselves as our sign, and then people are able to relate it. And the thing is, don't stop judging zodiac signs, right? It's just be mindful about what you're saying to people, especially too. There's so many people like the Signology, like on Twitter or like TikTok. I don't go on TikTok. I don't think I have brain cancer at the moment, and I don't want brain cancer, so I'm not going to go on there. But on Twitter, there's like there's like zodiac sign Twitter where they just talk about the signs. And there's only so much you can do. But I mean, this might just be me being a Leo here. What you do, like other people see that. What you do makes it okay for others to do, right? Like one of the biggest lessons I ever got in my life. Like this literally, I remember the day I turned into a Leo. And let me share this with you guys. I was in a personal development program. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's called Psi Seminars. Long story short, it really helped me, but Psi Seminars is honestly kind of really fucked up, and I wouldn't really push it on anybody anymore. I used to, but anyway, I was in the beginning course, right? And it was that course changed my life, right? But one of the things was, at the time it cost like $500, and I was like super poor, and that was a lot of money to me, right? And that whole time I was in that class, I was in this like group of like 80 people. I mean, every time I had a question about, like, this dude was like, oh, you can change your life and fucking, just go within yourself, and saying all that type of stuff, all that shit. And I would get up every time and I would take the microphone and I'd say, okay, you say all of those things, but what does that mean for me? And I would hound, sorry, that was really loud. I would hound questions on these people so I would get the experience, right? And I would ask questions that a lot of people, it sounded stupid, but I wasn't afraid, because it's like, dude, some people might have been able to throw $500 away just to waste a weekend, but like, I'm poor, like I need this money, so I'm going to get something out of this. And the whole time after that day where I asked a bunch of questions, I had pretty much I think 20 people come up to me and they were like, thank you for getting up and asking those questions, because that was the thing that I wanted to ask, but I was so scared to go up and say anything that I didn't want to do it. And this is the thing too, and this is also something you learn. I volunteered. I talked about this on a weekly horoscope not too long ago, but I volunteered at a kids' youth camp, and kids are funny. You do, if you're an adult and like me, right? Like people look at me as like the big kid. So like if I'm a little bit more fun and reckless, like the kids are also going to act more fun and reckless, right? That Leo, I talk about the Leo, I talk about the sun in the sense of like what you're doing, like monkey see, monkey do. So when we are, even when it's just for fun and games, and again, I don't mean to say like, oh, we can't have fun with astrology. It's I just think we need to be just have more attention on it. Like, look alive, I think, in a sense, keep our eye on the ball. Cause I think right now too, and this was, again, astrology is in a very strong place. It's building, it's growing, but it's at a very vulnerable place in the sense that so many things, it could really just take one article, but I also think, and this is a little bit of my opinion, I don't think that there's necessarily one astrology that's better than another, but I assume that there is probably a few things that will get better results than others. And I think too, this is something that I'm going to eventually have another episode about that's pretty much more dedicated to it, depending if I can get the person on here that I want to. But I truly think astrology can have, in my opinion, and this is something I want to start working on too, and anyone else is can start working on it too if they really can do the work. But getting some type of research going with astrology, and of course it's been tried to be done before, but I this is different. Again, I think like we have social media, like there's people, like I'm able to get people's experiences like that, get information like that, get their chart, get the accurate read of it, share it with the world, confirm it with, like there's just there's so many avenues for astrology to be really activated. I'm struggling here to kind of not necessarily find what I want to talk about, but what I want to focus on, because it's so it's overwhelming where things are at, in my opinion. I think astrology, I think astrology is an article away from something, but I think, there's a better version. Probably there's astrology that works better than I think others, and I think this could be a moment where we can get some statistical research going together. And I think there's no way. I think there's no fucking way we can't get some type of evidence with astrology. There's no way. There's no way. As a professional astrologer, and I know that other professionals that do those, bang out those readings and those horoscopes all day long, they know there's no way. Like, there's times with clients where I've been shocked of how like a chart looks, and I was wrong in the way that I maybe first interpreted, but then, it made sense as I kind of looked at it. But like nothing out of like, oh, that wouldn't show up, or, oh, that doesn't make sense. Or like, oh, or even a client being like, oh, that's wrong. Like, and that's not to gloat or anything. That's just the truth. And I think getting some type of statistical evidence, getting some type of research together, I think that not only, for one, that can happen. Two, I think it could lead to some evidence. And that's where, in my opinion, I think things get really crazy. Because if we could find some type of even just slight statistical, just something that catches the eye. There was already like the Mars effect, right? But I think there can be a little bit more. That was just Mars. There's so much more we can do. But I think if you could prove something like that, that's where things get really serious. Not only in the sense that, again, also this is a very serious practice. I know we joke about it. I joke about it a lot. I love astrology, and I think it's something to joke about, because we should joke about life, but also like, no one gets into astrology because things are going fine in their life and they don't have any questions about their existence or others' existence, right? Like, most people get into astrology either because they had like their mom was into it and they were into it really young, or some traumatic life event happened. And maybe there's the few people who got into horoscopes, and most people, though, it comes from some type of insane thing that happened, and they need more answers. Astrology is a very, very serious thing, in my opinion. And I think while we should have fun with it, I think it's also, I feel like we don't take it seriously enough. And I think at this moment, and this is me included too, this is why I'm trying to do this podcast. I'm just trying to do something different, for one. Also, like, God, I feel like the past few years, with how much has changed in everyone's life, but even in the world too. God, the iPhones weren't even a thing a couple years ago, and the iPhone has just completely changed how a human being operates on a day-to-day level. But as things just get more, as astrology blows more and more up, like, and it's only going to get bigger. Trust me, it's only going to get bigger. And I would put money on that, simply because it's so popular in pop culture, like Amazon, like targeting people based off their zodiac sign for like products. Like, expect more of that. In fact, this is actually kind of something I wanted to talk about, in the sense where, I brought up this idea of the sense that I think astrologers should work with bigger companies. I think, just like, we had an astrologer for Ronald Reagan, regardless of political affiliation, be pretty cool to be an astrologer for the president. I'm not gonna lie. But I also look at astrologers should have, like, a lot of, and I kind of got some feedback that was like, oh, like, but that, like, you're just doing astrology for money then. And it's like, well, Well, would you rather have a professional astrologer at Amazon at least doing good astrology, or would you rather have some Joe Blow who doesn't care about astrology giving Amazon the data or the references to work with as far as what zodiac signs and what? And I'm sure they probably have a computer for something, but I think astrologers have a kind of a God-given right, in my opinion, at the foot at a lot of big decisions. What I'm going to quote one of my great friends, Drew Levanti, at I got to shout out his at name. Hold on. I always fuck up this fool's at name literally all the time. So give me a second. Do you guys like the click clack of that mouse or that thing too? Anthrosophist. There we go. Drew Levanti, really good friend of mine. He I liked what he said. He's like, astrology being ruled by Mercury, being within proximity to the sun again. He said something like profound of like reestablishing, astrology's proximity within, with superiors, with the light. And I think if we want a good astrology to continue, I think as astrologers, we're going to have to be put in positions that I think, are very serious. But I think in order to get that, we have to take our astrology seriously. And I think we got to take this like for real. This is also why and this is why I wanted to do this podcast, because, I got a lot of ideas I want to talk about, but we've got to defend astrology. It's going to be really easy, I think, in the future where people, especially the whole astrology is racism for girls thing, like that already sounds, because people are also like, people using astrology to be judgmental, right? I think also, what I think is also dumb about that is like, dude, people are going to judge each other off their hair color if it comes down to it or whatever. Anyone will use any reason to judge someone and look at a difference, right? And with astrology, we get to celebrate those differences. But in astrology, we get to be able to relate those differences too. I think, and this is also something I'm going to talk more about on this show, is just like how to defend astrology. Like for me, like my favorite thing, and when I say favorite, I mean I absolutely hate it, is when I go to a bar and like I'm like a regular dude. Like I don't look like an astrologer. But I'll like meet a group of people, and I've had like guys like find out like I'm an astrologer, and all of a sudden it's like this whole, I got to defend myself and what I believe and what I do for a living. And I don't entertain it. Like, I'm like, for one, like, I don't ask you about your job, so stop talking. But also too, it's like, well, people will be like, oh, like, how do you believe in that? And, a lot of people are like, well, like, you don't get it. It's more than, your sun and your moon. It's like all these other things. It's like, well, in my opinion, it's like, well, number one, motherfucker, the whole reason religion and even God mapping the everything starts from astrology, science. And that's the other thing. Fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson, and fuck any astrophysicist that talks shit on astrology, because astrology is the reason why they even have the opportunity. The only reason we have pictures of deep space is because of astrologers, because human beings looked at the stars, noticed a couple of funky ones, and said, I think that means something. And over millennia, which, by the way, if I remember this right, I might be incorrect on this, but if I remember this right, I think as far as like documentation goes of astrology, I think it goes back to 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 years. But we have an article, I think this is in Chris Brennan's book, where there was some island off of Egypt back where the city of Alexandria was, and that some dude, I don't think it was Valens. It might have been Valens, but I also could be completely wrong on that. But there was an astrology teacher saying that, like the Babylonians or the Sumerians, whatever was over there, I can't think of it at the moment. They had documentation that they'd been doing it for 50,000 years before that. Which again, this is ancient text. It's an interesting source, but I look at it as like, dude, astrology is like, it is your God-given right to look at the stars and to look at the moon and to look at the planets and to question what is the meaning of life, and to question if that has a reflection. And I think for someone to say something as petty and as low as like astrology is racism, girls, for one, like, let's actually go over what that word racism means and what that means historically speaking, because like I don't remember like genocides of Tauruses or of a specific person born on a specific date. Racism is an actual thing. That's an actual problem right now, not astrology. Not because you got denied a fucking date. But it's, I mean, oh God, I could go on days about that. But what I'm trying to get here, I think this whole first episode, why I wanted to do this was I really wanted to talk about what the future of astrology holds. I want to map out what we're looking at here in a lot of different ways. I think in this show, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. I'm going to have people on sometimes. I'm not going to have people on sometimes because I want to talk about what I want to talk about. And sometimes other people don't want to talk about that, and that's okay. But it's, I look at the future and I think that we're playing a bigger game. Well, it's just like that, dude, look at like that eclipse. Like, do you guys remember when you first saw the COVID article? Like the first COVID article you saw. It was just like, new virus in China. Look out. Not a big deal. And then here we are a year later. I look at astrology in the same sense of like, it's big now, and it's getting bigger. But what does that mean, right? What does that mean for astrology as it gets bigger? What does the future have for it? Because clearly the future has something for it in this moment. The future didn't have, if you look at astrology, and again, I'm not the best historian when it comes to astrology, but really the last time something crazy with astrology happened was really like the Enlightenment, when everyone was like, dude, we don't fuck geocentrism. It's all about that heliocentric lifestyle. And astrology kind of pretty much got tossed to the side. It was already it was kind of getting a little bit popular again, but then it got kind of brought down, and it really wasn't brought back up until like the, 17th century a little bit. And then, the 18th century, or my bad, not the 17th century, no, the 19th century is what I'm thinking of, in the 1800s. Then of course, the 20th century, now we're here. So clearly I think astrology has some type of bigger future. If you know anything about compounding interest, you can see the trajectory of where this momentum is going. And, if you're going to ride the ride, you gotta keep all hands and feet in the vehicle at all times. If that makes sense. Like this, like we're going up and we're going to go down. And I think not that that's a bad, like, oh, we're going to go down, it's going to be bad. Like down isn't like, shit's about to go down. There's going to be more in this. It's only going to get brought up more and more. And I'm so curious as to where there's going to be a moment where something about astrology intersects with something. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like, but astrology is going to intersect with something somewhere. It's like when you got a bunch of lasers in a room, like if you're trying to get through them, you're going to end up hitting one. I wonder what that is. And I think the only thing to do about it, because again, also too, I just want to reiterate, because again, we can't, as astrologers, our job is to judge. And I think we need to accept that. But in order to accept that, we need to understand the power that bestows. We're judging charts. We're telling, we're telling people from what they understand what the universe has to say about them. And of course, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. But it's also you're not just you're not again, and this is me totally generalizing, but this is also going off the numbers I have. 70 to 80% of my followers are women. And I know after speaking with most women and also speaking with most men, being in these certain conditions, a lot of people they can't back up astrology. And I know a lot of people are insecure. They don't want to talk about it with their family. They don't even want to talk about it with their friends because they're afraid of how they're going to get judged. And it's just like, don't worry about it. Like, for one, they're going to judge you anyway, no matter what. I've learned, I mean, you could be perfect and someone's going to judge you for being perfect. So accept that. But two, also, like, don't be afraid to defend it. Don't be like, yeah, astrology is, we don't know, but I still believe in it. Like, I had that. So, and this is probably a good spot to end too. My old roommate, Sam, I'm gonna try to get him on this podcast. He's interesting because he does not believe in astrology at all. He says that after he lived with me and we used to get drunk, smoke cigarettes, look at the stars. And I'd go off about this, and I've read his chart enough times. Like, he doesn't believe in astrology, but I think he's much more familiar. I think he's familiar with the vibe. Anyway, I was in the camp of, astrology is not a science. It's like, astrology is not a science. And he kind of stopped me and was like, yeah, it is, bro. And this was like 2 years ago. And it really hit me because he always, what I loved about this guy, and this is why I want to have him on the show, is because, any idea I spit at him, anytime I talked about it, criticize it under a microscope. He's a Libra rising with Venus and Mercury and Virgo, just really knows how to go, yeah, well, you didn't see this. And it made me, for one, it made me a really good astrologer because, for one, I know how to defend astrology. I know how to debate this stuff. But when he said, astrology is like, it is a science. You should think of it that way. Like, he's like, dude, like, look how much shit there is for this. He's like and this is why I've been tweeting about it much more about, like, dude, like, there's so much. Name one practice that you, besides art, besides maybe even art, like, that goes this far back, that has this much information, that has this much text, that spans every culture, that spans, time, essentially. Like, it's also too, there's a lot of things in this world we consider science that are not science whatsoever. And especially in this day and age where a lot of people are like, I believe the science, which a lot of people just say that just to say that they believe whatever everyone else agrees with. When you actually do science stuff, like most astrologers were doing science. Like, when you read these books, this is science. This isn't, I don't know. Astrology is not a game to me. And I truly think that a lot of people, if you feel insecure about your belief about astrology, and if you feel like, I don't know, like, I'm here to tell you, you should defend this shit because I think it's crazy. But I think in that sense, if you're going to defend it, you got to understand what you're defending. You got to, don't take it for granted. And I think, and again, I'm talking to myself here. I take a lot of things for granted. I take astrology for granted. I'm a white man in America in 2021. My whole life is taken for granted but, it's, I look at astrology as this insanely powerful tool, and it's only going to get bigger. And the way that it gets bigger is defined by how we use that tool. If we're using, if our tool is a hammer, but we're only showing people how to cut stuff with it, I don't think people are going to like the tool. And I think people are going to say we're dumb. But I think though, if our tool is a hammer and we show people that we can knock some nails in with one hit, I think people will start to consider maybe switching over to their tools. And I think that's good because, again, let me just be clear about why I promote astrology. Number one, because that's another thing that people need to be more clear on, like why, like if you're into astrology, why you promote it. It has helped me, like as far as being a human being. And also, like, as far as being a human being and trying to make sense of reality and trying to make sense of this existence, because I don't know if you guys are in the same world I live in, but this is pretty, like, I've been getting really into history. And the more you get into history, the more you realize how fucking crazy this moment is right now. Like, we're really here. We're really doing it. This is really his life. And I think, religion can't answer the questions we have now. We can see, like, this is something too. I was wondering if I was going to go past an hour with this podcast. It looks like we will. But I want to say this because this is something I wanted to do. I was going to do a whole lecture about this actually. But raise your hand if you know what the James Webb Telescope is. Okay, I'm going to assume a lot of you didn't raise your hand, so I'll explain that. The James Webb Telescope has pretty much been in production forever. Pretty much, it's so crazy. It's a telescope that you're going to shoot into space. It's going to go on the dark side of the moon, so it's really dark. Oh, no. Is it the dark side of the moon, or it's going to a really dark place in the sky where it has no light hitting it. And it's basically going to see the beginning of time. And as a human being, for one, I think that's going to be one of those moments like Copernicus being like, hey, we revolve around the sun. I think when we see the beginning of time, which that's what the telescope is going to do, by the way. Like, this isn't like it might be. It's like we're literally going to know pretty much how things started. And I think that type of information is going to, a couple circuits are going to kind of go crazy up in the brain a little bit. What I'm trying to say is religion is so far gone from being able to answer questions. Not to say that religion doesn't work. I think in fact, more as you go into the future, there's going to be much more this trend towards, I guess, like more I think Orthodox religion will probably become more popular as the world gets more and more crazy. But we need more explanations, and I think astrology is just this beautiful. Not only is it spiritual, not only is it religious, but it's also like it's logical, it's rational. It doesn't ask you to think. It doesn't ask you to think about spirits and angels. It asks you to look up at the sky and trust, right? Fuck, what was I going to say about that? There was a reason why I was going to go over an hour and a half with this, or not an hour and a half. Well, in the sense that, I don't remember. Anyway, I'm going to get back to that. We're going to talk back about that. There's a few other things I wanted to say before I forget. I feel like I'm just totally blanking out right now. That was a good talk. That was a lot that's going on. I hope I can have more conversations like this. God damn it. See, this is why I need to also have someone here so I could remind what the fuck I was just talking about. And I know a lot of you guys are probably also sitting there being like, you're talking about this. Anyway, that should probably be the end of it. Because I know whatever the fuck I was going to talk about, I have a whole the James Webb Telescope. Holy shit. There we go. I was like, dude, trust me. I know what I was going to talk about with that. Like, I've got plenty of that. Well, what I want to say is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do when we see that type of stuff? And my question is with astrology, I don't know. I look at it as astrology is just, I think it's going to be that tool where we can really reconcile our existence here on Earth. And this is the thing, and this is what, what's his face? Cosmos and Psyche, Richard Tarnas. He opens up his book with this idea of, now that we are not the center of the universe, we have a meaningless existence. And I think astrology, us reinterpreting our place in the cosmos, us reinterpreting our position in the sky, us basically seeing how we work with our solar system, with our natural environment, I think that's going to install a lot more, I think positive energy. I mean, I'll have to bring this up the next time I do this, but there's studies showing populations that don't have, religion or some type of spirituality, they fall apart. It's not good. And we need that, but we need something that works. We need something that's going to work for today. We need something that's going to work for, this crazy world that we live in. And I think stuff like the James Webb Telescope, stuff like Black Mirror, I was kind of looking at the astrology of 2030 and astrology of 2040, those Black Mirror episodes where they're putting their consciousness into dreams, that's all real. That's totally going to happen. The future is absolutely wild. It is absolutely insane. I would believe all that stuff that's going to happen, for sure. And I also think along with that is going to coincide the sense of okay, how do I make sense of my reality? How do I make sense of why I am here? And I think there is nothing, not even Jesus Christ can be more profound in the planets telling you how life is. right? Jesus doesn't have his own specific, and people are like, oh, Jesus has a message for you. You don't know what that is, right? Well, I mean, you could also relate, like, Jesus's message maybe is the birth chart, right? The natal promise. But I just look at it, the sense is like, there's nothing more heavenly than I think looking at the planets and interpreting it. And I think this is also going to help us find more, if we can, rather than looking at our universe as like, oh, we're just this meaningless dot. It's like, no, we play a role in our solar system. We play a role in this galaxy. We play a role in here on Earth. This is why, I used to be a big like, oh, let's terraform Mars. But dude, I kind of hate that idea. Like fuck Elon Musk. Every single landing rockets is pretty dope, in my opinion, because I'm a science nerd. I will give him that. But fuck Elon Musk. Fuck terraforming Mars. Earth is where it's at. Earth is dope as fuck. Earth has water, and Earth has oxygen, and Earth has hot people. I like it here. I want to stay here. But I think we need to appreciate it more. And I think in order to appreciate it more, we need to appreciate life more. And I think in order to appreciate life more, society is working towards that. Society has a lot of fucked up issues. And I just truly think astrology, I mean, to kind of go back to what I was saying too, why I promote astrology, I think astrology really is, I think it's going to just come back in a very powerful, strong way. And I think it's the time to take it seriously. I think it's the time to, if you've been on the fence of astrology and how you feel about it, dude, fuck everybody. Like, you believe what you believe. Like, if you believe in astrology, you believe this shit. Because you know what? I believe it. It works for me. I've been, especially when you get into like the timing stuff. Like I at this point, I trust astrology more than I trust the brakes on my car. It just works so well. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. Those were I can't believe I got to talk about everything I wanted to talk about in this one podcast episode. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have no idea how to end a podcast. I've never done this. I've done a couple lives, which I'll probably go back to doing. I'll probably do a live stream of this at some point. But so yeah, be sure to follow my Twitch. Again, if you want to support me, more episodes, become a patron. I'd super appreciate that. It'd be very lovely of you. Yeah, I got to talk about everything I wanted to talk about. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say. No, that's it. That's it. Anyway, I love and appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this whole podcast, be here with me today. I really hope that everything that I talked about, again, don't listen to me. This is something that I'm going to try to talk more about on like my channel, just in general, is there's no, like, don't listen to my ideas and these aren't even my ideas. There's no such thing as an original idea, number one. But think for yourself, right? Take what I say. Maybe you agree with it. Awesome. But maybe there is something that you disagree with. Fucking figure it out. Why do you disagree with me? You could tell me. I might read it. I might not. Like, you might be wasting your breath if you try to tell me what you disagree with. But why I'm saying this is we need to have, don't just nod along, right? Like, even if I say something, even if I'm like, yo, this is the way it is, like, and I'm sure there's plenty of you that are like, Cameron, trust me, I'm already judging you. Like, I'm already telling you you're wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of you doing that, but I would just like to say, just this is, think for yourself during this time. Put the pieces together yourself. Like, this is one thing I say with astrology all the time, like a lot of people, and I pretty much say this exact thing with a lot of my clients, because a lot of people ask me, like, how do I utilize my placements better and my chart better? And it's just like, dude, just be yourself. Like, don't even think about the astrology. Like, do exactly what you would be doing right now if astrology weren't involved. If you weren't even thinking about it in that sense, right? Follow your natural intuition. Trust your gut instinct. It will literally never, ever, ever, ever fit. I don't even have to share my stories, because I'm sure every single one of you have a story of how your gut never failed you. So trust your gut. Listen to your intuition. Think for yourself. Don't listen to what I have to say or what everyone has to say. But what I would like to do is, if I can influence you, if I can make you ask bigger questions, if I can make you look at your world in a different way, if I can give you, again, why I'm calling this the delineation. Because not only do I want to explain things in astrology, but I want to map things out for you. And if I can get you to look at your world more macrocosmically, like that one saying, I fucking love this saying. It's think globally, act locally. Like if I can get you to do that, then I think I did my job. And as an astrologer, if I can, our astrologers, our job is to tell stories, right? And if the story that I tell can influence you to make a different decision, hopefully a good one, then I think maybe I did my job. But that's what I hope that's what I hope you guys get out of this. I hope that's what I can bring to you. So, like I said, this is episode 1. I'll probably be live streaming these again here in the future. Don't follow me on Twitter because I need to stop tweeting but follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, Cam White Astro at both of them if you don't know me already. Follow me on YouTube for more weekly horoscopes, monthly horoscopes. I'm also going to be putting out much more astrological content because the reason I have a Patreon is because I like free content. I want to keep doing free content, giving out free content. So if you want to support me putting out more free content on YouTube, go ahead and become a patron and you'll become pretty much a producer of the show. And I'll put you on a graphic here once this kind of gets more steam rolling. But with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys so much. And thank you for sticking around this whole time to listen to everything. And I'll be seeing you next time.